Today's guest is Kevin Diffley, founder of K. Diffley Law Group, a boutique law firm that's redefining how legal services support real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and business owners. Kevin brings a unique mix of real estate experience, legal strategy, and entrepreneurial vision to help clients build, protect, and grow their wealth. So in this episode, we'll dive into smart legal planning, creative solutions for real estate deals, and why thinking like a lawyer before problems arise is the key to long-term success. So whether you're closing deals, managing risk, or planning your legacy, this conversation is packed with actionable insights you won't want to miss. So with that said, let's get started. Kevin, thank you for joining us today.
Ben, thank you for having me.
We are live in front of billions of people, soon to be. That's the goal.
Yes. So, this is an evergreen thing here.
So, Kevin, in your intro, is there anything that I missed? And I asked this because you are fairly well-rounded in terms of your law services that you provide, right? So let's start with that. Anything that I missed?
With our practice, we're heavy transactional focused. Real estate is a bulk of what we do, and we try to cater to realtors, lenders, consumers, buyers, sellers, of course, investors. So in addition to real estate, residential, and commercial, we have a full-time landlord-tenant attorney. We do estates and probate. We file when people pass away and help people obtain authority over an estate to sell property or to gain access to assets.
A common thing that holds up deals.
Yes,
when not done properly from the
Sure.
beginning. Yeah, we've gone through that before.
Yep. Businesses, we assist with transactional documents, whether they're selling membership interests or stock, leasing, of course, and we also have a robust settlement practice.
Nice.
How could I forget? Talking to a lender.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think I caught you saying before that you're approved with UWM, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mentioned that because that's where we refer a lot of our business to, so that's key.
Not with co-ops yet. That's been quite the challenge.
Okay, well, maybe not the worst thing in the world, given that,
Yeah.
so could be a blessing, Kevin.
Yeah.
We'll see. So you must do everything then, co-ops, condos, you said commercial, mixed use. There isn't essentially a part of real estate that you don't work in, right?
Correct.
So, Kev, let's dive into what we talked about before we even started, right? Because I think that this is something that everyone needs to hear because it will literally make their business improve. So can you touch on the team building stuff, the introduction, and how important it is, not just for realtors, but more so for clients, on them establishing and knowing who their team is early on in the transaction?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think one of the most important things with real estate that most people don't realize is you want your law firm involved earlier than later.
So how early is early, Kev?
Early is as early can be.
Okay.
If you're thinking about purchasing a house, or you're thinking about selling a house, or getting involved in commercial, but I guess for purposes of the podcast, we'll stick to residential. So if you're thinking about it, you're getting everything in place mentally and where you think you might be before you talk to your lender or realtor, contact your attorney. You want to have legal. You want to have legal in place from the very beginning. You want to have your team started, of course, those two things. But more so what we're seeing, especially these days, is multiple buyers on a deal. And they're not even aware that they can structure things differently most of the time. If they're purchasing through an LLC or a trust, that's something you want to have talked about before you even get into what property will I be purchasing. But what I see a lot of times at closings is there may be 2 or 3 or 4 people on a deal, and one of them came with the bulk of the money. And now one of them, let's say, may want to live in the house while the other one's co-signing, whatever it may be. Now at the closing table, they say, hey, put me at 99% ownership on the deed, and put them at 1%. Or if there's 3 people, 1%, and I'll take the 98.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did you talk to them about that?
Yeah.
While they're sitting there.
Probably not.
Yeah, and I've actually seen blow-ups at the table. So, that's one of the main examples that I try to give on, let's have that conversation up front. It doesn't happen that often on residential deals, but there are certain circumstances where it may make sense to have what's called a tenant in common agreement before you even sign the deed or before you even get the transfer documents in deed.
Can you talk or expand about what that actually means? How is tenant in common different to other forms? How often, because from what I've seen, tenants in common is fairly frequent actually
Sure.
on transactions. But just dive into that a little bit too, Kevin, for those that don't know.
Sure. Let's say if there's multiple people, let's say 4 people purchasing a property, let's say none of them are married, you essentially only have 2 options, at least in New York.
Right.
Joint tenants with right of survivorship, which means those 4 people now own the property. One dies, the rest of the interest automatically goes to the remaining 3. That's it. Tenants in common, you can get into a little bit more of the granular and structure it exactly how you want to by way of percentages. So if you don't put anything down, it's automatically assumed each one will have 25% in equal interest.
Right.
If one of them dies, it doesn't go automatically to the remaining 3. Instead, it goes to their heirs. That 25% interest would go to if they had a spouse or children.
So when do you typically have this conversation with clients? Actually, let me rephrase the question. At what point would it be ideal to have this conversation with your clients?
I think if you know as a purchaser that it's not only going to be you, or it's not only going to be you and your spouse, there are going to be other people that you're purchasing a property with, even if it's, the mother-daughter or the 2 family, and you anticipate one of them living below you and you're living above. Have that conversation up front initially. As soon as you talk to your attorney, that should be the first thing you talk about.
Should
when
be.
you're purchasing. Yeah,
Should be.
yeah, absolutely. It prevents a lot of problems.
Do you feel like there's a reason why people shy away from it, like in the beginning, as opposed to like the example that you gave, last minute at the table?
Well, I mean, there's a few different reasons. One of them being most people don't even talk to their attorney until either their offer's already been accepted and an inspection's happening, or sometimes even later than that when they just go to sign the contract. So at that point, especially now, last couple of years have been a seller's market, it's rush.
Yeah.
Rush to get the contract done. Rush to get in contract, or we might lose the deal to 20 other buyers that have a very similar offer. And then it kind of goes silent after that while they're working with you on the mortgage application and the rest of the process. And then we get title back, and then it's rush when we got to get to closing. And they may not think about it or bring it up even until then. And then the other thing is, conversations like this don't really happen as far as anybody asking a question like that, or even the general public.
Well, it's something that I admire you for saying, Kevin, because I know quite a lot of attorneys. I've never had an attorney ever make that suggestion ever, that we should talk like early before your offer even gets accepted so we can go over this type of a game plan. Because actually it goes both ways, in my opinion. Whether you're trying to do some complex deal and split up the ownership, do LLC trust, whatever, obviously you need to have that set up. But even if you don't and you're just buying it by yourself or with your wife, just to go over the process and know who your team is before you go into it, from a consumer's perspective, it takes away the cloud over like what goes on during a transaction. So we talked about this earlier, is that knowing who your team is before it's time to use them will reduce stress. It's something I always tell clients, like, I can't eliminate all of your stress, but I can minimize it.
Yeah.
And that is part of the process. By having them up front and knowing who your attorney is, there's no dilly-dallying when you get your offer accepted. You know who your attorney is, you know the process. So for instance, like, I'll give you something. This is going to sound silly, Kevin, but most clients don't actually know that they have to put an EMD down on contract, right? Once the offer gets accepted, and they're like, oh, by the way, you need to come to your attorney with a check for $20, $30, whatever $1,000. They're like, what?
Yeah.
Right? So that's insane. I think that's an insane thing for someone to have 24 to 72 hours notice on. And I think that I wouldn't say it's unprofessional on our part, but it's just something that we can prep our clients for in advance, like you've literally been saying for the past 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And then really the 2 other things I just want to touch on quickly about why you should have the attorney up front. One of them, attorneys, especially in real estate, have to be high volume because we're relatively low margin.
Right.
So if I'm doing 100 deals a month, how many different lenders am I working with? How many different realtors am I working with? So one of the things I've been saying is there are certain realtors especially who are experts in their area. Like if you're purchasing in Hollis, Queens versus you're purchasing in Great Neck, Nassau County, two totally different places, not too far from each other, but they're different counties. And there are realtors that focus on these areas. So I'm working with pretty much not all realtors, but a lot of different realtors who have specialty areas. If you come to your attorney first, now I'm in a position where I can say, hey, look, I don't know if you have a realtor yet, but if you're looking in this area or these two areas specifically, this realtor will make sure you get your offer accepted before anybody else.
Yep.
Because they know everybody in the area. They know the owners. They know the list agents. They know everything and everybody they need to know. And that will persuade some people on the other end to say, you know what, I think that this is going to be a buyer we're going to go with because they're going to get closed and they're probably going to move quicker and they're going to have legitimacy to them.
Yeah, the agents have their own reputations, right, in those areas. And what you're saying is basically you know them, you know who to hook them up with, or who knows how to structure a deal, who doesn't know, who can delay things.
Right.
So, okay, you had another point. I don't want to cut you off.
This point is specific to realtors.
Okay.
Major changes. I'm sure you probably spoke about them on a lot of the podcasts.
What
also
I like
since
to call
last year.
NAR. That's
Yes,
my best
yes,
pirate.
yes.
You can get me an eye patch, Erico. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
Major changes have happened. Things are happening a little bit differently. Not every listing agent is actually splitting or giving anything to a buyer's agent, which previously that really wasn't happening at all.
Question before you continue. Sorry to cut you off. What percentage, I won't hold you to it, would you estimate that is? Or is it specific to a certain area like Queens or the Bronx where the listing agent won't pay much, if anything, out?
There are some areas in particular, but it's really just on a deal-to-deal basis.
Yeah.
It's not the norm yet, but I think it's going to go there because on the sale side, if you know you're going to be able to get more money, then why not? If the buyer is already going to be paying the buyer's broker anyway.
Right.
So there are certain trends that shift, or, on this particular deal that I have an example for, the list agent actually got the referral from somebody. So she had to pay a referral fee.
Yep.
So there was 4%. She was taking the entire 4%, but didn't tell anybody about that. The buyer agent did have her 2% on the deal sheet,
Right.
but had no agreement signed. Now, they want to come to the attorney on this, and I say, hey, we have both brokerages. We added the buyer's brokerage to the contract itself.
Right.
Every single contract references if the seller's going to pay, it's pursuant to another separate agreement between the realtor and either the list agent or the seller themselves. So if this buyer's broker didn't have anything signed, how could she protect herself? And what could we possibly do to protect her?
Right.
Mind you, contract is signed 1 month. 2 months later, when we're looking to close, that's only when we get the commission agreements
Crazy.
and the check request from the seller's attorney, and we say, wait, where's the 2%?
Yeah.
You didn't tell us either this was baked into the price, you didn't tell us that this was going to be a credit used back. There was none of that, and there was nothing signed. So I just had a conversation before I got here today with a new agent that just sent me an email with a new deal and said 2% to my brokerage. And I said, I see your offer sheet, but I don't see it was signed by the seller. I've been having this conversation with every single agent because I'm not going to let this happen again. If I'm involved early and I understand where the offers are coming from, who's paying, and where the money's coming from, I'll make sure that you get paid at closing. And this type of scenario is only going to pop up more and more often.
But it needs to be signed.
Until people start, yeah. But but I would say probably from what I see, a majority of agents don't.
I have a theory.
Yeah.
My theory is that a lot of those buyer's agents that don't get it signed give it to you because they want you to do the dirty work for them.
That might be a theory that makes sense. I've never been asked or told that, though. So it just comes from, I think, maybe even a lack of knowledge. Beyond just, do
lack
work.
of knowledge for sure, but at this point, a lot of the agents in the business that we've been talking about the NAR settlement for the past year. Sure. It's almost been a year since it's gone into effect. So I think look, they should know when they do the showing, in my opinion. You contact the listing agent, you ask how much, and then whatever, if it's, if you're happy with it, great. If you're not, then you talk to your buyer and you get an agreement signed that covers your commission. And I'm not saying at all that agents shouldn't be doing this. I mentioned this even a couple of weeks ago, that agents deserve to get paid. We wouldn't have deals to work on if they're not doing the job, right? So there's nothing wrong. I just think a lot of agents have difficulty having those conversations with their buyers, because it's much easier when they've been saying literally for the past 10, 20 years, yeah, buyer, agent, don't worry, the seller pays me. And now it's, by the way, if the seller doesn't pay me enough, which is happening more, you're going to have to cover that 1-2%.
No, I agree. And just to stem it back for a minute, what I was saying was not a situation where the buyer was supposed to be paying the buyer's agent. It was where the seller was supposed to be paying the buyer's agent on the 2%.
Got it.
And they just didn't have their offer acknowledgement or any deal sheet. There's literally a signature line, and it says seller.
I missed that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds absolutely insane.
Yeah. No, but that happens all the time because nobody gets anything signed on the buyer agent side from the listing agent or the seller. Fair. And there's nothing that we can do to enforce that unless you have an agreement signed. To flip it, on the flip side, a buyer's agent and a buyer, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Sometimes they even bring those documents that should have been signed when the offer was first made to the closing table. Yeah. And they say, oh, can you go over this with them also? Or the contract process. And,
But what you just said, Kevin, about the not getting it signed by the seller, I mean, that to me is crazy. That's absolutely insane.
How do you protect yourself?
It's the whole deal. Yeah. That's the whole deal. It's how you're getting paid.
Absolutely.
Back to the buyer's agent commission. I will repeat this because the world needs to know. If you're getting paid as an agent, you need to tell us. You need to tell the lender. You need to tell the attorney. For us, more specifically, is because we need to account for that money, right? We have to verify that the buyer has enough funds in order to even clear the file for closing. Right. So the situation happens. Fortunately, it has not happened to me, at least not yet. I'm sure it will, just a matter of chance. But I've heard from my other loan officer friends that literally the day of, agents like, hey, the buyer's paying me 2%, you throw it on the CD, get us paid. And then this happened actually at a CE I taught last week, where a listing agent friend of mine got an email. Wasn't part of the agreement, by the way. It's a separate buyer's pay. And the buyer's agent says to my friend, the listing agent, I need 2% from the buyer here. And we're just like, it's got nothing to do with me. Handle it with your buyer. And the only suggestion that I could really offer, because the buyer apparently didn't have the funds, is that if the appraisal came in a little bit higher, maybe you could throw in a concession there to pay for it. But, if you don't, then you're kind of ish out of luck.
Yeah.
So are you seeing that a lot?
I'm seeing that a lot more often, yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you said from the beginning. If everybody takes an additional 5-10 minutes out of your life on a transaction and you're on that call and I'm on that call, we're going to be able to handle it from the beginning and structure it the right way. And we're going to be able to protect not only the client, but also the realtor. Yeah.
And it sounds like, to an extent, communication fixes everything and it's a happy place. But it's freaking true.
Yeah,
it's really true. Because we can't read each other's minds. Everyone has a different way of doing business. I mean, look, that is eliminated if you work with a team that's all worked together before and consistently works together. Anything else? Because I wanted to ask you about something that you talk about, actually. Your 4 Ps. Proper planning prevents problems. Where did you come up with that? That's awesome.
That I was told probably when I was 7 years old by my father. My father always, till this day, he still drops the 4P line.
Really?
And I tried to mix it up and change it, and it always seems to come back to proper planning prevents problems.
Yeah. And how do you apply that to your business?
Well, everything is done up front and in advance, and everything is done in writing. And when proper communication is happening up front, all the problems we just talked about.
I think we have a theme here. Yeah.
We can now prepare for them. We can prevent them. We can literally prevent those problems. So not everybody's taking the time and the extra effort to have that conversation up front.
Yeah.
And more realtors need to know about it. More clients need to know about it. More buyers need to know about it. More sellers.
Yeah, the more education, the better.
Yeah.
With that said, and we were talking about this before we got on, I'm finding a lot of buyers are using ChatGPT these days. Do you ever get any that like come to you and like not tell you how to do your job, but kind of tell you how to do your job after putting in stuff into ChatGPT?
Yes and no. I don't know how much it stems back to AI. It probably does, because that's where all of the new knowledge, I think, is that people seem to think they have is coming from. And even like Google back in the day, you can't Google everything because you're going to get 10 different articles, and some of them will be conflicting.
Yep.
What information is the right information to rely on in the information era that we're in?
Even, Kevin, for myself, like I've tried it on the mortgage side. I've ran scenarios through ChatGPT, which I knew the answer to, and sometimes it's right, but oftentimes it's wrong, like too often. So I generally tell people it's kind of good to give yourself a baseline, or like a baseline of understanding, but once it becomes really nuanced, it's not great at all, because there are so many specifics in there that ChatGPT can't do, at least not yet.
And look,
right? Maybe it can get there eventually.
Everything is nuanced.
Yeah.
Think about law school. What did I really learn? All theory. Everything was theoretical. If I started my law firm the day after I graduated, or I should say the day after I got barred as an attorney, I don't know if I would have fallen on my face. I might have figured it out, but it would have been at the expense of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I would have been making a ton of mistakes. I knew I had to learn the right way at another firm before I even went out on my own, because everything is nuanced and procedural. ChatGPT is not going to tell you about the procedures. I had a client call me yesterday, selling a house in Bayside out of a trust. He lives in Jersey. His brother lives in Florida. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, so I know there's an attorney review period after our realtor gives us the contract to sign. And you're going to come and step in and help out with that. And I'm like, this is New York. This is downstate New York.
Right.
Things are a lot different down here. Attorney involvement is a lot more increased. The procedure is totally different. The amount of EMD is generally totally different in New York, downstate versus outside states, and even upstate New York. That, at least as of right now, like you said, AI isn't really involved with, because they don't know the procedure.
So this client was essentially giving you a procedure that ChatGPT told him, but was probably based on New Jersey or Florida, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't work that way here, basically.
Yeah. Which is good, because now, I told him the fee versus this is all the work I'm actually going to be doing. You thought I was just going to be looking at an MLS form contract?
Yeah.
No, we're doing a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Not only that, trust review, since you're selling out of a trust. So after I explained it, I think he was understanding and well aware.
Yeah, and I think it's going to become common. I do think it will do more good than harm, right? Because as the technology gets better, because one thing I love about ChatGPT is that it lifts, we talked about this with communication, it lifts the cloud off of whatever new thing you're about to take on. So from the consumer's perspective, they don't know about like how to handle the stuff with the trust, and it's obviously part of your job, but to them it gives them more confidence, and I think it reduces their anxiety when they're doing something so big as to like selling a property. So I think it's really good for that. Basically, anytime I have a new task to accomplish, it could be an internal project in the business, it could be something outside, planning a wedding, for instance, and it paints
Congratulations,
this
by the way.
Thank you, and congrats to you. Kevin just had his third baby.
Yes.
I actually want to go back to how you balance your family life, if there is any balance, but we'll come back to it. And we got a few minutes left. So I was saying basically, Kevin, that there is good in it, that it will reduce or remove the curtain to give consumers a better idea of whatever they're about to approach. It will give them the map. Unfortunately, in the case you just mentioned, the map was wrong because it was the wrong state, or maybe they didn't know how to prompt, who knows. But the good thing about that is they have you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As of right now, as far as the traditional transactions concerned, usually the realtor has one of the strongest relationships.
Yes, for sure.
And they have the ground relationship.
As they should, honestly. And I'll go into what you're saying because I try and do this whenever I speak to a new client, is literally address what you just said, because their brain, regardless of whether it's their first pre-approval or I'm the fourth or fifth lender that they've spoken to. If I'm the fourth or fifth, there's a reason, right? It's because something's missing. But I really just break down the process for them from start to finish. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. At least on the mortgage side. I don't tell them what goes on with you or with the realtor side or inspector, but just painting the picture for them. This is actually going to sound really aggressive. But who said it really well? You saw the second Dark Knight movie with Christian Bale, the one with the Joker. And the Joker's saying to Harvey Dent, he's giving this example of like, if I tell everyone I'm going to blow up a bus tomorrow, no one freaks out. Again, really aggressive example. But the point that he makes is if you know what's coming, you're less likely to freak out about it. So that's essentially what we do and what everyone needs to do. Again, like I said, very, very aggressive example. But if you just paint the picture for them of what's going to transpire, they're like, okay. And then I always add in there, what I just told you is 95% accurate. There's going to be some things here and there that will not go exactly to plan, but this is who involved. You've got us, you've got buyer's attorney, seller's attorney, lender's attorney, you've got the title rep, you've got a home inspector, you've got an appraisal and realtor and a bunch of other people that I haven't mentioned. So there are so many variables in a transaction, and it's not also possible to teach a client literally everything, because that would just overwhelm them. I mean, even think about it from your perspective, Kevin. You went to law school. You're a highly trained professional. You can't download all your information into a client, but you can tell them everything that they need to know so this way they're like, okay, cool, I feel good about this.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing about AI. That's the hardest thing about systems is people are still people. You can't take every person and use the same exact system or the same exact conversation, because they're going to interpret it differently. They're going to have different questions. They're going to feel a different way about it. And that's why I think the relationship is really the most important thing for a real estate transaction.
Yeah. Who said that? Probably, I think it was Grant Cardone, who not everyone's a huge fan of, but you put in contract, the R is relationships or something corny like that, but it works. I do want to dive back to family life, because I'm asking you selfishly. This isn't for the audience, given I would love to start a family in the next few years. How do you balance that? You just had a newborn, you have 2 other kids, a lovely wife. How do you do that and do all the insane things that we just discussed over the past half hour?
Yeah. I ask myself that every day. It's an interesting thing. I look at it now with my third kid. They're all 4 and under at this point, soon to be 5.
Congrats again.
Thank you. So July 2020, COVID baby, my first, Knox, was born, and I started the law firm in November.
Yep. So
that was COVID. It was a crazy time, and I was going a little crazy just planning and over preparing, I think, for the firm.
Right.
And then also figuring out how business was gonna come about while you're wearing a mask and people weren't really comfortable seeing each other. So it's funny. My wife says, even to this day, I really didn't even have a relationship with my oldest, my firstborn, until he was a few months old. Even when she would leave me for whatever reason during COVID, he would often cry, and I didn't have that balance. You know, I was just starting the firm. I was trying to figure out how to stay afloat, let alone thrive, or thrive, let alone stay afloat. And that really hit me. You know, that hit me as we got into the family life, and you realizing, you know, what life's purpose really is. And I think when you have a kid,
it changes.
If you don't realize
right?
it, then it changes anyway, and you figure that part out. If you're somebody who's going to be involved and be present for your children. So with the second, my relationship with him early on, I was also in a lot of different place with my firm. You know, now I had employees. Now I had people that could run and operate when I stepped away. And, you know, thank God I have some great people that work at the firm. And I made sure, you know, time, I got to be there. I got to be able to look him in the eye and really just spend the time and take him out in the backyard and whatever it may be. And now
get your bonding in.
Yeah. And that helped out also with my oldest two, where we sort of drew, I guess, back together. And now with the third, it's like, it's a shit show. It's like it's like everything you thought you knew is out the door, you know, because you only have two hands, two arms. You can only carry two at one time. And the oldest is now in school. He just finished pre-K. And now I'm like, you know, my wife's still recovering. My baby's a month and a half. Finally got a daughter. Oh, wow. Very excited about that.
That's, again, awesome.
So I'm still trying to figure out the schedule. You know, I was home for a couple of weeks. Again, thankful to my incredible team. I had the luxury to be able to do something like that.
One of the great things about being an entrepreneur, you get some benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And even now, you know, I get the call at 5 from my wife, and she says, you know, either the nanny left or my mother, my Gigi, her mother Gigi left. You can't leave me here alone with 3 kids. Get home. So I'm like, all right, you know, normally I'll work till 7, 8, 9 o'clock. Right. But now I'm getting back home at 5 to help out. And that is helping out with the presence and the balance more than anything else.
Yeah, and you're still working from home, but you're at least with your kids, like, as needed.
Exactly, as needed. And then that goes back to, you know, the emergency thing.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'll pick up for a new deal. I'm always available via text. You know, I always tell realtors that, lenders that. You know, I'm not one of the people that's just shutting my phone off on the weekend. But I may say in the text, great to meet you, you know, can we do our intro call Monday, let's say, or something like that. And generally, almost all the time, people understand and respect that.
Most buyers, I don't think they expect for an attorney to be available on the weekend. I don't think that is a reasonable thing, truth be told.
That's the one good thing about being an attorney in real estate.
Yeah, as lenders we have to, because if someone has to send a pre-approval on the weekend to place an offer, we were talking about before, we have to do that. But I saw this post in some random loan officer Facebook group, which I found fascinating. And it's an out-of-state guy, so it's a little bit different. But he ran not a scenario. He ran some statistics on all his buyers that went into contract and he closed, and he found that all the buyers that contacted him on the weekend for an emergency, pre-approval to get their offer in, only under 20% of them ended up using him. Right, for the transaction. Wow. Whereas if they contacted him between Monday and Friday, over 78% of them stayed with him.
Yeah.
He didn't get into why, but my thought process is that people that, you know, are last minute contact you on times that are inconvenient for you. And like I said in the beginning, we have to be available, but to a degree. Mm-hmm. But the people that demand your time during what you could deem as inappropriate hours don't value or respect you. That is where I think of it, right? Because if they did value and respect you, one, they'd stay with you, or they give you an opportunity, but they wouldn't contact you, you know, at a weird time.
Right.
Right? So I think that is part of it. I'm going to ChatGPT deep research this to get the psychology behind it. We have to wrap up, actually, Kevin, but I had a cool thought, actually, while you were talking about your family before. If you remember to, it'll be really awesome for your kids to see this podcast in like 15, 20 years from now, and you talking about them. This stuff, like, I forget about, but I've been doing like video content for almost 8 years now. I started in 2018. Wow. Yeah, I got on it quadrupled my business from 2018 to 2019. That's the joys of getting on things early, which I need to keep replicating. But what's funny is, like, even looking back at those videos, like, I don't recognize myself. They freak me out. It's like, I don't look like that anymore. But it will be cool for me to see in 10 years, 15 years, same thing with the family. So I think it will be especially great for your kids to see in 10 to 15 years from now and be like, that's my dad. He was working hard. He was hustling.
Yeah. And just to add on top of that, if we're still alive and blessed to be able to be doing this still, in 10, 15 years, we circle back and do this again,
right? And
just see where we are. Maybe you'll have 10 or 15 kids by then.
Yeah, we'll see. Like everyone says, start with one. Go for as many as possible. But who knows? Okay, so before we formally wrap this up, Kevin, any final words of wisdom for whether it's realtors, buyers, sellers, lenders, even? To add before we check out?
Yeah, not so much wisdom, but just when you're working with your law firm or attorney, get them in as early as possible. Have these conversations. Listen to this podcast because there was some important topics that we touched, and have that conversation up front as early as possible, because when you do that, now we're in a position that we can protect you. And that's what we want to do. If deals are coming together and forming, and we can add value early on, and we can even potentially save a deal or save a commission, or speak about a creative loan situation where we can help out and add value, that all comes from getting the attorney involvement up front, and that all comes from trusting and communicating with all parties from the very beginning.
I love it. Final thing, Kevin, how can the people of America reach you if they need you?
America.
Or wherever else you serve.
Yeah, the whole world. No.
I just love saying that.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah, I just got on TikTok, finally.
Oh,
I don't even know what my handle is on that yet, because I'm actually doing that. But the media team works with Facebook. Kevin Kelly Diffley is the individual, and Kevin K. Diffley, which will now be K. Diffley Law Group, will be the business page. And Dr. _K_ Diff, D, like David I, 2 Fs, like Frank, is the Instagram handle. And I think that may be the TikTok handle as well. So you can always DM me there, or info@kdifflaw.com, info@KD, like David I, 2 Fs, like Frank, LAW.com. Email anytime or call. As we get to know each other, and you have my office information and my personal, I'm happy to pick up and respond at any given time, pretty much, unless I'm with my kids.
I love it. Kevin, you have an amazing radio voice, too, by the way. You could easily be an MC or something. I was just like, he should be doing this. Kevin, thank you very much for coming on, man.
No,
appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Peace out.